to this exciting learning event. I'm Laura, the Danwadaag Coordinator, and I'm really delighted to be here with you today to share some of our really important learnings from the Barwaqo relocation site in Somalia. Thank you for joining, and I really hope that you find this session not just informative, but also inspirational. I'm going to start by outlining what we see as the purpose of this event and why we're all here today, followed by a short background, including a video, and then a quick snapshot of the Danwadaag Consortium itself. We will then explore the Barwaqo settlement in more detail and look in depth at the critical success factors that we have identified in our experience. My colleague Andrew from the Regional Durable Solutions Secretariat will lead us in a quick learning review, and then we will move into a panel discussion. And for the panel discussion, we are incredibly honoured to have one of the masterminds of Barwaqo and a really inspirational leader, the Maina Watiin of Baidoa, and also joining us for that panel from ECHO Somalia, one of the first donors to believe in Barwaqo and to invest resources, is represented by Morten Petterson. So really looking forward to that panel discussion at the end. So just quickly, before we dive in depth, why are we here? What do we see as the purpose of this event? For us, it's really about achieving three things. It's about sharing the case study of Barwaqo, with a real-world displacement solution for Somalia that has been shown to work and has been documented, to highlight critical success factors, so really to drill into what we see are the most important enabling factors in making Barwaqo the success that it is. And from there, we want to focus this panel discussion on these collective opportunities. So what does this mean for how we continue to work together to solve protracted displacement in Somalia and the ever-growing IDP crisis that we see in urban centres there? How can we collectively unlock these solutions, put them into practice? How can we replicate and scale this Barwaqo model, not just in other areas of Somalia, but also regionally and globally? So it's for that reason, in particular, we are very excited that you're able to join us for this discussion. So before I move into the introductions properly, we wanted to share the story behind Barwaqo. So there is a short animated video which has been developed, so we will just play that now.
In Somalia, conflict and natural hazards have forced thousands of people to flee their homes in search of safety and better opportunities. The humanitarian community estimates that there are more than 2.6 million internally displaced persons, or IDPs, in Somalia. The majority were forced out of their homes due to conflict and recurrent droughts and floods. Displaced persons often head to larger cities like Baidoa, where they settle in spontaneous and informal settlements, which are frequently overcrowded and lack even the most basic services, such as water and healthcare. Many squat on private land under dire conditions and are at imminent risk of eviction. In 2018, IOM and the Danwadaag Durable Solutions Consortium were looking for a long-term solution to create a safe and dignified new home for displaced families facing eviction. The solution came from the Southwest State Government, who donated 306 hectares of public land 6 kilometers outside of Baidoa. IOM and partners launched the Baidoa relocation project and developed the site to make it habitable. In consultation with the displaced families and surrounding community, many humanitarian and development partners came together to ensure that public infrastructure could support access to all necessary services. Roads were constructed, as well as solar street lights, schools, police stations, primary healthcare services, a nutrition center, a community center, a legal center, and more than 1,000 communal latrines. To improve the hygiene and sanitation, IOM constructed sustainable water supply networks and drainage systems to prevent flooding during the rainy season. The new site is named Barwaqo 2, which means prosperity in Somali, and is locally referred to as the new town of Baidoa. By March 2021, nearly 13,000 individuals have been relocated to the new site. Each family received cash assistance and a plot of land with a garden area on which to build their new shelters. By having a stable and documented residence in the city, the social status of the families is elevated and their overall well-being has improved. The project offered a practical example of implementing the Humanitarian Development and Peace Nexus, HDPN. It shows how humanitarian, government, and protection actors can join together to achieve durable solutions to displacement, not only by meeting immediate needs, but also by finding long-term solutions for displaced populations. IOM hopes this relocation project can be replicated in other urban centers, both in Somalia and globally.
Great. So hopefully that video illustrated to you a little bit more of the process and the rationale behind Barwaqo. So we just wanted to emphasize that now. So why is Barwaqo so important? Why do we feel that it merits its very own learning event? For us, Barwaqo presents the tangible and concrete evidence that lasting solutions to Somalia's displacement crisis are possible. They might not be easy, they might not be straightforward, but they are achievable given the opportunity and the right enabling factors. And that's why we're here today, to share the evidence on Barwaqo, to share the approach, and really to excite your interest in supporting the next stages of the Barwaqo model, whether that be in Baidoa, whether that be in other areas of Somalia, or whether that be beyond within the region or even globally. As you know, Somalia is the fastest urbanizing country in the world. There are currently 2.9 million IDPs, which is the latest figure. That figure is currently increasing on a daily basis, and the ongoing drought that we face right now, compounded with longer-term climate change factors and conflict, is forecasted to increase that caseload beyond 4 million people by the end of 2022. And that represents roughly 25% of the country's population. So as we know, IDPs tend to arrive and settle as subclans, made up of smaller extended family units, and they settle in dense informal settlements on the edges of urban settlements. This is almost always on private land, where IDPs are subject to extortion and cycles of secondary forced evictions. Our settlements are usually on the outskirts of the city with limited access to services. IDPs are not only spatially marginalised, but also socially marginalised as well. So Baidoa in particular has been affected by this. So the city of Baidoa itself has doubled in area in the past 5 years, growing from roughly 16 kilometres squared to 31 kilometres squared this year. So a huge explosion in growth, largely driven by the influx of IDPs and migrants. Baidoa currently hosts over 475,000 IDPs in Baidoa. So just an enormous number. And as you can see on the graphs on the left-hand side of the slide in front of you, this is taken from the CCCM cluster from October 2021. You can see the scattering of the IDP settlements around Baidoa, and you can see how they are scattered around the periphery of the city. And the photo there just illustrates one of those many, many camps in Baidoa. So for these IDPs, asset deficits paired with macroeconomic trends means that return is very, very difficult. So the majority of these IDPs will settle in Baidoa in the longer term. However, they are also faced with a myriad of obstacles in integrating locally. And as a result, IDPs end up in this precarious limbo situation where they are dependent on inconsistent income generating opportunities, casual labour, and humanitarian aid. So despite humanitarian aid not being most IDPs' main source of income, IDPs still represent the largest recurrent cost to humanitarian assistance in Somalia. So solving this issue of longer term solutions in a sustainable way is absolutely critical. We believe that this model that we're sharing with you today has a great deal to offer beyond this specific case study and relocation site. We believe if we get this model right, it can be adapted and contextualized across Somalia and beyond. And why do we believe that? Because Barwaqo represents a new norm. It demonstrates that lasting solutions to displacement can be achieved under the right enabling conditions, which we'll go into in more detail in the later slides. It provides this approach to resettlement in collaboration with city planning to sustainably reduce humanitarian needs and enhance self-reliance and resilience towards this integration of IDPs. And Barwaqo, as a relocation site, contributed to progress towards the end of displacement for the relocated households there, ensuring that they have access to services and are able to enjoy their rights as their surrounding host communities. So it has been really transformational for the families that have been shifted, that have been relocated to Barwaqo. Now, 2,009 households that faced risk of eviction and lived in makeshift shelters in the downtown urban core of Baidoa now live in greatly improved shelters, but most critically have title deeds to their own land. So that transformation has taken place over a 3-year period. So in 2018, the families that we have relocated were living in these very makeshift sites, very high risk of eviction, and now not only do they have improved shelter, they have improved access to services, but they also have title deeds to their own land, which provides them that security, that safety, in order to be able to build their resilience, to build their coping capacity, and move along that journey to self-reliance. And we will also touch on the value for money proposition that Barwaqo demonstrates as well, particularly as it relates to shared investments. So before I go into Barwaqo in more depth, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the Danwadaag Consortium. Just a little bit about Danwadaag, the Durable Solutions Consortium itself. Some of you may already be familiar with us, but the consortium is made up of 7 like-minded partners, 3 national and 4 international agencies. We're hosted by IOM Somalia, so we are unique in that we are a UN NGO consortium. We have been collectively working on solutions to displacement in Somalia since 2018, but I would like to highlight that we consider ourselves to be a 3rd generation Durable Solutions Consortium, and that we're very much based on the learning and the gains of programs that have come before. So the EU funded RENTEG consortiums, and also the MIDNEMO program, a UN Habitat and IOM collaboration. Both of those programs in itself gave us very valuable learning in order to build the logic model and the theory of change for Danwadaag, and to ensure that our program was very much based on evidence coming from the field before us. And we have been funded to this point by UK Aid or FCDO. As I mentioned, we're UN-led, and we're partnering with a coalition of international and national NGOs that really brings a wealth of expertise and contextual experience to the table. So what we have been able to do over the last 4 years has really been contingent on the expertise that these partners have really brought to the consortium. So the way that the program has been designed is very much to take advantage of that and to ensure that the added value of each partner is capitalized on. In terms of our coverage, we have been working in Mogadishu, in BRA, in Baidoa and Afgoi, in Southwest State, and also Kismayo in Jubaland State. Our target has very much been displacement affected communities, so taking a very inclusive approach to solutions and ensuring that we are addressing challenges and specific displacement related vulnerabilities, not just for IDPs themselves, but also for their hosting communities and also for returnees where they are also resident in the same population. So taking a very much area-based, inclusive approach to sustainable solutions. And particular attention through the lifespan of the programme has also been given to the agency of vulnerable groups, including women and girls, and also youth as well. So particularly for some of our livelihoods components, making sure that the specific vulnerabilities related to these groups were very much integrated through those interventions design. So this is our pathway to reintegration and to reduce displacement in Somalia. So we see these as building blocks. It's not a linear process in the way that the arrow suggests, but we have illustrated in that way to hopefully give you some understanding of the different components and how they feed in. So very much kind of establishing an enabling environment, looking at community-driven planning processes and government leadership, so ensuring that the programme from the outset is community-driven and government-led has been critical to the successes and also to the learnings that we have generated through the programme. That has been layered with sustainable access to basic services, with land tenure security, which obviously we'll be focusing on in more detail in the next section, looking at more broadly at housing, land and property, and on top of that, layered with interventions focused on self-reliance and economic opportunities for displacement affected communities. And then the idea of these components is that it would ultimately result in progress towards increased reintegration and reduced displacement-related vulnerabilities for these targeted communities that we're serving. This diagram that we've shared on the right is our theory of change. So you can see our overall goal, as I mentioned, is the enhanced durable solutions towards reintegration and reduced displacement. And underneath that, we have our 4 key outcomes. The outcome at the bottom, as you can see, is focused on adaptive learning and management to inform durable solutions decision making. So again, we have embedded this key tenet of learning through the whole programme to ensure that it influences not only our own programming interventions and our own adaptive approach, but also is supporting the government leadership, the government decision making around durable solutions priorities, and also influencing other actors across the humanitarian development peace nexus and the donor community as well. The current model of the programme that we have now moved to, and as you can see, the sustainable integrated housing, land and property solutions are really at the centre of the work that we're doing. So the idea is that actually this provides the foundation and the pivot for all the other interventions that we are layering on top as Danwadaag. So this, again, very intentional, very much based on evidence from the programme, recognising that this critical importance of housing, land and property solutions. So now we're going to move on to deep dive into Barwaqo, this real world solution to the displacement crisis in Somalia. And before I start walking you through the slides that we've prepared on that, I would just like to share a short video from Mohammed Abdullahi, the IOM Emergency and Durable Solutions Coordinator, just sharing a little bit about what the Barwaqo investment means for IOM Somalia.
Greetings from Mogadishu, and great to be taking part in the Barwaqo Initiative learning event. For IOM, Barwaqo ultimately represents one of our greatest strategic investments in our effort to operationalize the humanitarian development nexus. I think the approach deployed in Barwaqo and indeed within the Danwadaag framework at large, where the initiatives are government-led and community-driven. This approach really empowers the community to resolve and be an active participant in resolving their displacement situation. And this is directly in line with IOM's progressive resolution to displacement framework. Somalia, and specifically Barwaqo, actually represents one of only 4 locations globally where there's been a real marked effort to implement some of the durable solutions frameworks that exist within IOM. Further to this, Barwaqo really demonstrated to us the strength of working together and having different stakeholders bringing real value and real expertise to the table. One entity to take the burden and to carry it all is really not only unrealistic, it's actually unnecessary. And Barwaqo has really helped us to understand the power of the collaborative effort. One done properly, certainly the Danwadaag Consortium is an example of this. And we hope that this can be an example for other initiatives, not only in Somalia, but certainly globally, where coming together really demonstrates a greater success. Finally, I think Barwaqo for IOM demonstrates the criticality to keep on pushing the norms and the boundaries within the response. IOM certainly believes there are more solutions than there are problems, and Barwaqo is one of those solutions. We hope we can adapt some of the Barwaqo lessons in other responses. Certainly we want to adopt the model, and I think this learning event is absolutely crucial for us to capture the real value from Barwaqo and to see what we've done right, also what we can do better, and to try and really raise the overall understanding of what durable solutions can be, not only in Somalia, but globally. Thank you very much.
So the Barwaqo approach in more depth. The progressive and visionary leadership of the Baidoa municipality really paved the way for new solutions to displacement in Baidoa. Their early adoption of urban development plans, policies, and strong leadership put in place the foundations to enable this resettlement project and successfully incentivized an unprecedented level of collective investments from donor partners. The land allocation, 163 acres secured to the northern side of the city, again, was unprecedented in Somalia. It's a substantial tract of land that was set aside for the sole purpose of finding long-term, lasting solutions to displacement in Baidoa and transforming the lives of IDPs and vulnerable host communities. Concurrently with this, government-led coordination bodies were set up. The Urban Relocation Task Force enabled local authorities to mobilise resources, also to convene stakeholders and build consensus, guaranteeing that these resettlement plans were linked to area-based approaches, also district-level strategies that were government-led, and expectations were aligned with affordable solutions. Mohammed mentioned it already in the video that we just shared, but the Barwaqo approach really demonstrates the power of working collectively, of working together. Right from the outset, this group of motivated agencies, government leaders and donors were able to come together to make Barwaqo a reality. So right from the outset, IOM, UN Habitat and the CCCM cluster, along with many other stakeholders, worked collectively to build this momentum and to make Barwaqo the reality that it is today. So in more detail, the approach itself. The people that were relocated to Barwaqo were relocated in groups at site level. So targeted sites at high level of eviction were volunteered to move after visiting the new location. So after go-see visits, these settlements, these sites were able to make an informed choice about whether relocating to Barwaqo was the right decision for them, for their families, but also their wider kinfolk and support network as well. So this approach of resettling clusters of IDPs at high risk of eviction, which was 80% of the population, and vulnerable host community members, which was 20% of the population, ensured that as much as possible, the social contracts and the social capital that exists in social safety nets that had been built up in the previous locations were maintained. So these, as we know, are absolutely essential for ensuring, for developing community and household self-reliance, and intentional efforts were made to ensure social cohesion and conflict mitigation, through the extension of assets, basic services and infrastructure to surrounding host communities. So that was very much this inclusive approach right from the outset of the design. So collective investments into community action planning processes and these government-led coordination mechanisms that I mentioned earlier really enhanced displacement affected communities' trust in the institutions and provided them with a means to engage more meaningfully in the planning processes and the decision-making processes, which was absolutely critical. So making sure that people that were going to make Barwaqo their home felt that their voice was heard through the whole process was an absolutely essential component, ensuring that the solutions for Barwaqo were based on this foundation of community ownership and an informed understanding of all stakeholders of their physical, material and legal safety rights and priorities. So very much enabling all of the actors to see Barwaqo through the lens of the people that are going to call it home, that are currently calling it home. To emphasize the collective approach to resettlement. So this slide illustrates just some of the collective multi-sectoral investments that were made. So layered and sequenced interventions from humanitarian and development actors address not only immediate needs of this vulnerable group, but also considered longer term sustainability. So while water trucking, particularly at the outset of the relocation, was still necessary, that was going on in tandem with longer term strategies to ensure sustainable water access through borehole drilling. So it was not done in isolation, it was done as very strategically and very intentionally to link these two aspects together, which is an absolutely essential part of ensuring sustainability in the longer term. So what did Barwaqo achieve? So in total, 44,466 individuals benefited from the Barwaqo site and the infrastructure that was put in place. But far more importantly than that, Barwaqo enabled over 12,054 individuals, that's over 2,000 families, to move, as I mentioned, from these informal shelters within crowded, internally displaced settlements to become owners of a 10 by 20 metre plot of land in an integrated city extension. So the transformation in that process is just really incredible. And this was intentionally done and intentionally developed with these wraparound services, looking at increased safety, looking at increased security, and also access to sustainable services to support a pathway to self-reliance. And to illustrate this impact, we're going to share a quote with you now of a woman who was relocated to the site. So this quote, I think, really illustrates what Barwaqo means to the people that are living there now. So this lady, Barling, shared with us during a key informant interview that from her perspective, she was always worried about when she would be evicted. But in Barwaqo, thankfully, they didn't have such worries. And what she really loves is that the land belongs to them, that they can build whatever they want, they can have their own toilets and access to water. So really kind of addressing very essential basic needs in a way which ensures that people feel empowered, that people feel that this is their place. This is their place to call home, to build their resilience, to build their journey towards self-reliance. So some of the program highlights that we wanted to share. I've talked a little bit about the strong visionary leadership of the Baidoa municipality, and I can't emphasize how critical that was to Barwaqo, to the vision of Barwaqo, and to really ensuring that it was a success, not least obviously the substantial land allocation that was made and the negotiations that were made with the surrounding host community to make sure that people could be relocated to that site in a way which mitigated any conflict around resources. This government land donation, coupled with the Danwadaag investments and other investments from multiple actors, really incentivized Barwaqo business groups. So one thing that we wanted to just highlight that we've seen as a product of the substantial investments that's been going into Barwaqo so far is that the Southwest State Chamber of Commerce has just constructed a market, which you can see in the picture here. So that's just been finalized, and 70% of that was paid for by the Barwaqo Chamber of Commerce, and that was co-funded by Danwadaag. The Danwadaag Consortium was able to contribute 30% to that. So this will provide a formal trading point for displacement affected communities in the site and improve access to services in Barwaqo for more sustainable economic development. And I think this really illustrates quite nicely how investments can catalyze other investments. How if you are able to mobilize resources, to create a vision, to make that vision a reality, that will galvanize further support, further actors, and inspire other donors, other agencies, other government ministries and leaders to also look to replicate some of this success. A little bit more on this catalytic success with these investments into infrastructure and services successfully incentivizing additional support. And I think it's really important to mention at this point, the collective vision and the joint donor partner investments were really critical to realizing the scale of resources necessary to make Barwaqo a reality. So this included investments from the World Bank, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, FCDO, USAID, ECHO, and the government of Japan, as well as direct interventions, as I just mentioned, by the Chamber of Commerce and the state government. So we estimate that the total value of investments in Barwaqo to date is approximately $11 million. So that represents a total spend of about $900 per individual that has been relocated to the site. But that figure is actually reduced to $300 per person when we consider the wider beneficiaries that have benefited from the improved infrastructure and access to basic services from the surrounding host communities and neighbouring IDP settlements. So what did we learn from Barwaqo? And I think for us, this is a really important part of this session to really understand the critical enabling conditions or the success factors in order to be able to replicate or to scale the project. So first we have to understand really what made it the success that it was and continues to be. And from that, how can we take it to the next level? How can we take it to the next stage? And that is something we're going to be discussing in the panel interview. And I'm really excited to hear all the questions or the comments or the feedback that you have to inform that panel discussion so that we can really have a collective discussion about the opportunities for scaling and replicating Barwaqo moving forwards. So what did we learn? What are the critical success factors that we identified? The first one is around political leadership. So understanding that local government must lead and must champion contextually appropriate solutions to displacement and resettlement. So primary to this, obviously, as I mentioned, was the allocation of land suitable for relocation and the negotiations with the surrounding host community of that land. The assurance and the issuance of land titles, deeds to prevent evictions, and importantly to give people that security and that peace of mind that yes, they can build a life for themselves in this location. They can build, they can invest in this place that they now call home. And the coordination of site planning to align public and private interests is really essential. So beyond this, local governments must continue to develop these policies, these plans to address systemic barriers to relocation, notably looking at affordable housing solutions that adequately outline the rights and special protection arrangements for IDPs, but again are affordable and scalable. So it's really essential that we deal with the scale of the challenge that we have, rather than prioritizing perhaps costly shelters for a few. How can we make sure that we find an appropriate solution which offers still an improvement and still safe housing conditions, but is affordable, that can be scaled, that can be brought to a greater number of people. Again, recognizing that the IDP crisis in Somalia is growing every day. And in parallel to this, or in tandem to this, it's really critical that we continue to make these investments in area-based approaches. And I think we've seen some really exciting shifts around that, and the drought crisis this year is further reinforcing the shifts towards area-based approaches and coordination mechanisms. So I think it's important that we ensure that those shifts that we're making during this drought crisis are maintained, are also opened across the humanitarian development peace nexus. So again, we can make sure that we are thinking of the end goal while we're still responding to these immediate life-saving needs. We are thinking about what we want to be able to provide for people in displacement. These long-term solutions from the outset. The same goes also for district-level planning mechanisms, so making sure that this short-term humanitarian support is coherent with these longer-term urban development initiatives, and also the nationwide durable solutions plans and policies. So making sure that these pieces are joined up from the humanitarian side into the development side, and then vice versa, from the development side into the humanitarian side, is absolutely critical. So joint informed decisions, solutions, joint informed solutions. This is the next critical success factor that we wanted to dive into. And I hope that it's come across really clearly to you how much of a collaboration Barwaqo really was. So we are sharing the learning on Barwaqo as the Danwadaag Consortium in collaboration with the Mayor of Baidoa, but it took so many other actors and contributors to bring us to where we are right now, and we need more of that. We need greater levels of multi-sectoral shared investments. We need collectively to affect change, understanding that no program or agency can single-handedly address the multifaceted challenges that we face with displacement, with the IDP crisis in Somalia. So we have to work more collectively. And we need to operate in tandem to ensure that our programs are convergent, that we're also leveraging one another's resources, and that our learnings are, and the evidence that we're generating is then incrementally informing policy and practice. So making sure that we are layering on top of one another's investments is really, really critical to achieving this kind of catalytic impact and effect that Barwaqo has demonstrated. And I think I mentioned it earlier, but just to really emphasize again that critical to this was the collective vision from donor partners and the shared investment approach. So again, going back to the costs of Barwaqo, so we estimate $11 million so far. That is not a realistic fund to come from one single funding stream or resource. It necessitates that donors come together on these collective visions, that they work coherently, again, across the humanitarian development nexus, so that the immediate needs are covered while we are continuing to work on the longer term, more sustainable vision. So this kind of collective action from donors, I think, is a fantastic example of what really can be achieved when we have this enabling condition, this joint way of working, which I think has been quite unique. And to emphasize underpinning both of this is the need for an accountability model. So making sure from the outset, on the implementer side, on the practitioner side, and also from the donor side, that there is this accountability in place, these accountability models, which enable appropriate measurement of the resources, of the progress, and again, so that we can learn as we go, so that we can adapt. We can pivot when we need to, and we can make sure that the resources that we have are ultimately used to the best advantage, to the greatest benefit of the people that we are serving through the programme. So the next critical success factor, contextualising solutions to displacement. Emphasising again the humanitarian development peace nexus and how critical it is to design these solutions with a longer term vision in mind, and to make sure that we have thought through how these humanitarian investments will dovetail, will provide a platform and enabling condition for these longer term aspects to come in as well, but critically ensuring that land tenure security and housing, land and property is an integrated component of these humanitarian interventions from the outset. So that is one of the core elements from our learning as Danwadaag that needs to be integrated right from the outset. And we need to ensure with humanitarian responses that we are thinking that way, because land tenure security is absolutely essential, recognizing again that forced evictions are arguably one of the biggest shocks that IDPs will face in these urban centres, and they also jeopardise hard-fought gains in resilience, in coping capacity, and also the value of investments that have been made so far. So what we often see with forced evictions is that any infrastructure that's been developed on the site is completely razed, destroyed. So any investments that have been made by donors, by agencies into latrines and other infrastructure, just gone. So for us, ensuring that land tenure security is secured is a priority right from the outset while we are planning for water access, while we are planning for health needs and food security. We also need to find capacity to ensure that land tenure security and housing, land and property is integrated into that component. And locally led solutions. So I talked a little bit earlier about the role of the community within Barwaqo. And again, for us, a critical success factor is that displacement affected communities must be active participants, not passive recipients of these programs. They must be empowered to meaningfully engage right from the outset in site planning, to contextualize the local needs and to optimize these solutions. So one of the reasons that Barwaqo works worked as well as it has is because of that, is because it is contextualized to the local context. It considers, the environmental, the social demographics of Baidoa, and is a solution based in that context. The interventions are adapted to what we know about Barwaqo, so ensuring about Baidoa. So ensuring that programs are embedded in this really thorough understanding of the local context is absolutely essential. And making sure that we capitalize on these community-driven delivery models that link also the capacity and the assets that communities have with these solutions, with these interventions, and so that we are ensuring there's community ownership and accountability to sustain these investments over time. And one of the tools that we have developed as Danwadaag to really help with this contextualization is the LoRA, or the Local Reintegration Assessment. We had a learning event actually on it last week, and we will be shortly sharing the resources and the video around that. But that is one of the tools that we have developed to enable us to actually have these very specific contextualized conversations around what displacement vulnerabilities look like for these communities. The next critical success factor we wanted to highlight was empowering economic development. So as we know, urban economies in Somalia are driven to a significant extent by economic activity related to land development and speculation. And this presents a real opportunity to accelerate the economic multiplier effects of land and land development, to build other revenue generation streams and asset-based income creation models that can be linked to the urban development plans and to existing private sector investments. So organizations like UN Habitat are working very much on the policies, on the frameworks around approaches to land value capture. So there is a real need to work collectively with them and with organizations like them to say, okay, if that is the framework, if that is the theory on this, what does it actually look like for Barwaqo? And so to continue to pilot innovative solutions on the ground that can then demonstrate or can then prove proof of concept so that we can then replicate or take that learning to scale. So some of the things we just wanted to mention on that is specifically looking at mixed tenure housing models. So looking at the next phase of Barwaqo moving forwards, how could we potentially integrate plots of land that potentially people could purchase or people could rent at a lower cost, and how do we make sure that private sector investments are considered in land allocation from the outset? So is there also the potential to sell or to lease long-term plots or spaces in terms of site planning to private sector entities that could then provide a revenue stream for the Baidoa municipality or for the area where this relocation site was developed? Okay, so I think that's it from me. So I hope that you found that overview and detail around Barwaqo interesting. I'm going to hand over at this point to my colleague Andrew Maina from the Regional Durable Solutions Secretariat, who'll just spend a little time distilling the learning for us.
Thank you very much for those of you who have taken time to put down your comments. And I see quite a number around influencing the approach, and we'll be very happy to hear more about what you mean by that, and also engaging the panel on how you can input. I also see close coordination, and I take that together with the comment around complementary UN, non-UN, NGO sector sort of multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral approach. We'll also be hearing a bit more on that during the panel discussion. Then there is a comment around modules and tools, other countries with protracted displacement, can be able to use. And I think later on after these events, we will share all the information, including detailed content on the tools, particularly from Laura, that can be used, in different contexts as well. Thank you so much. As we transition to the panel discussion, we just want to show you a brief video on Barwaqo, 1 year on, which will set the scene for the panel discussion. And we really hope that you will find the information that is on that video quite useful and enlightening. And even as you watch the video, kindly take this opportunity to ask Mayor Watiin, who is with us here, questions around how, his vision around Baidoa, what more can be done, and how we can all collectively engage on this to achieve durable solutions for displaced communities in Somalia as we move forward. Thank you very much.
baan ku guurnay marka aan ku guuranay wadankan abaar may ka jirtay wal olaade oo al-shabaabnay haysadii yahan ku guurnay waxaan ka talanay in Baidoa isku degno oo qaamamka iyo meel isku ka daragno
waxaan u soo guurnay dagaal sokeeyo oon olaad
kamaan deganeen oo la dhaho maraya intaas oo yaan deganeen oo sana kaamkii hadana dhulkii aan deganeen dadka la iska lahayd waxa leeyahay dhulkii waan rabnaa inuu guuro
intuu koyna marmarsoon gabal leeraa ku noolayni kaamyaal oo lama ee waxa marnay oo noo guuri
أول ورقة محن كجرني قول أو عريري روب كداران هاي قشن كسوق لهاي بحال كسوق لهاي
guriga fayleeya leenka dhasay roobkii walaan oo reebay in shaqada hamiinkiina dhaxanta ku galay ee gurigana halkan boosone iska lee
dhulkii oo annaga aan leenahay oo maanta oo idan nagu haysanin oo hiisadiisa aan hayso oo maanta ka guurna aan la dhehaynin oo ka baxana la dhehaynin ee annaga leesaan doona ugu tashanay horta taas hiisada koowad annaga meesha aan soo degnay waay teeda labaad biyaha xaq laga helaynin annaga hadda biyaha annaga habeenii maal aminka rabno biyaha waan ka helnaa caafimaadka annaga waa diyaar waxbarashada naftarkeeda waa diyaar waxa maanta naga maqano meel aan u raadinayno malaha dhulna ilaahay mahadiis waan helay deegaanna intaan ka helay dib dambe hadda aqreenan aadamooga adduunka inaan laabto meeshii aan markii hore aan ka imaado aan u noqdo lagama rajaynayo.
Thank you so much for being with us until this point. We are now at a very exciting space during this learning event, where you will be hearing directly from the actors that were involved in the development of Barwaqo. We have with us Mayor Watiin, whom I will allow to make some introductory remarks, as well as maybe explain a bit about the motivation and initial interest when it comes to the Barwaqo plan in 2018. Welcome, Mayor Watiin.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody in the meeting, and I'm very happy to be here today to explain about the overall Barwaqo side, the process from 2018 till today. And we have, that we have been facing a lot of the protracted IDPs since 2016 in Baidoa. And we can see that up to today, the IDPs are still coming to Baidoa, which is making Baidoa the epicenter of the IDPs in Somalia. And you can see that it's also creating a challenging as well as opportunities for Baidoa city. At the beginning stage in 2018, January, Baidoa municipality has called all the organizations, including UN organizations, INGOs working in Baidoa after there has been a mass eviction happen in Mogadishu, October in 2017, that has lost a lot of the humanitarian facilities in that place and evicted many households, almost 5,000 households that have a part of them also returned to Baidoa. So we have called all the humanitarian partners, UN agencies in Baidoa, the municipality office, and we have discussed how we can mitigate the evictions that might be happening in Baidoa, because most of the IDPs were living in a private land, and some private owners, people, they say that they claim that they want their land back. So we have suggested that why do we need IDPs to settle private land while the government can get land, public site, to relocate and to resettle the IDPs. And also it was, we could see that it was creating a lot of the Islamists in Baidoa city. A lot of the congested settlements was also happening in the town, which was leading that easily that is breeding the diseases and also lack of the hygiene and sanitation. So we have conducted assessment in February 2018 to Barwaqo side, which is the northern side of Baidoa. And all the humanitarian partners, developmental partners have agreed that this is accessible for the IDPs because it was not far from Baidoa city. It was very close to the next of the IDP settlement is in the northern side of Baidoa. Our plan was to initiate two sites, one for the northern side and another one for southern side, where the IDP is the most concentrated areas in Baidoa. But due to the funding constraints and the challenges, we have started as a pilot to Barwaqo side in Baidoa. IOM and other partners, the donor communities, FCDO, formerly DFID, and ECHO, and all have supported the initiative. So the CCM started to demarc and the site planning of Barwaqo site and putting all the surfaces in the area, water infrastructure, education, healthy, the streets, horolities, the police posts, and the government deployed 100 police forces to protect any security incident, so to keep the protection issues, the safety of the IDP that will be relocated to Baidoa side, to Barwaqo side. So this has initially, this has also laid a foundation for the discourse of urban municipal planning in Somalia, and the government mindset of dealing IDPs IDP solutions has also been changed. So after that, in 2019 June, we have relocated the first batch of 1,000 households to Barwaqo side. After we have during the process, we have also drafted SOB, standard operation procedures, which was focusing on, which was also taking part all the humanitarian partners and the developmental partners to see that who will be first relocated and to Barwaqo side. So the SOB was saying that first conducting an assessment to the IDPs, and finding who is the highest risk of eviction and who is the medium risk of eviction and who is the lowest risk of eviction. Then the highest risk of eviction became 1,000 households in Baidoa, IDP sites. Then we have created committees from those IDP communities, and they went to the one-day site visit to Barwaqo site to see that if they are happy to settle to the site or not. Then they finally went there and they see that everything is prepared to Barwaqo site. The water is available, schools were available, and the police posts were also available, STDs, solarities, healthy, everything. Then they have agreed to relocate to Barwaqo side. This was a municipal initiative that IDPs to get a permanent land while they were living in a private land, and they have to get access to the land, access to the housing, access to the land tenure, so all the basic rights that they need to have. So while they all came to Baidoa, and we could see that they don't wish to go back to where they come from. So in 2019 June, we have relocated 1,000, the first batch of IDPs, 1,000 households, and September 2020 we have started again assessment with the government officials in Somalia State together with the partners. We have conducted assessment again to the Barwaqo side, just to start the second phase of Barwaqo side. So we have also started after the assessment. We have started site planning and the demarcation of the properties and putting the surfaces again to the Barwaqo 2 extension to the north side, and finally we have relocated again 1,009 households to the second extension, second phase of the Barwaqo extension. Now the total relocated households are 2,009 households, including 170 poor host communities for integration and for integration purposes. Now they have all the basic needs. To Barwaqo side, they have water, they have schoolies, they have healthy posties, they have the roadies for protection issues, they have the lighties and the police posties. Everything are there except the housing, permanent housing. But still they are still having but some temporary housing. So after the second phase completed, the site have attracted many business groups, the community of Baidoa, and it is contributing that Baidoa is the expansion of Baidoa city, and it's contributing that Baidoa has also started the city planning and urban planning to the northern side of Baidoa. So this was very successful project, and looking forward just to continue. The other relocation is like initiating the southern side of Baidoa and still continuing the northern side of Baidoa. So to see that we can see that almost more than 68,000 households living today in Baidoa as IDPs. So we are looking for a solution for those all IDPs, and the municipality have many plans to support those protected IDPs in Baidoa. Thank you, Andrew. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Watiin, and I believe a lot of you have had the comments that he has made, very, very useful. And if you have any questions that you can direct to Mayor Watiin, please feel free in the chat section to do so as well. I would want to invite Peterson Morton, who is online, to introduce himself and also to say a few comments around the motivation and initial interest in supporting the planning around Barwaqo from 2018. Morton, if you're there.
I hope you can hear me. Just give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, great. So thank you for inviting us, and welcome to all, and distinguished Mayor. It's good to see you again. On the questions, I mean, I think I'll highlight like 3 main points, and fully acknowledging at the same time, of course, the government lead on this process of urbanization in Baidoa and the security of tenure, which Laura has spoken to extensively. But let me add another 3 elements that I think was important for us. That was this, what shall I say, convergence of common interest, of common purpose, a clarity of where we wanted to go. We hadn't really seen that since 2015. We had seen a lot of discussion and policy development around durable solutions and evictions, but nothing really tangible and concrete on the ground. Barwaqo offered us that opportunity. And I would just highlight three things what created this clarity. There was a clarity in terms of spatial, physical, municipal planning. It was not just about shelters. It was much more inclusive. It was including access roads. It was including drainage, as actually the video showed that Laura was displaying earlier on. It included solid waste management. It included disposal. It stopped short of a proper environmental impact assessment and an action plan. That's probably something that could have been taken into account or should have been taken into account. But there was a physical planning approach to all of this. It was not just about shelters. And I must say, we have seen examples in Somalia where shelter takes kind of a predominant role, but a shelter does not create a settlement. This is about settlement planning. And shelters alone does not create settlements. They are an important and indispensable ingredient, but doesn't create the settlement aspect. And that's the second clarity. There was a clarity about that we wanted to create a settlement. The third and final clarity, I would say, was that we all knew that this was a long process and therefore a multi-year engagement. We all know the saying, Rome wasn't built in one day, and that's true, and it's true for many situations. But it's particularly true when you build new neighborhoods and urban areas. And I think these three clarities was a fortunate and lucky constellation that all convinced us to say yes, we are going to invest, and that catalyzed a number of donors, not just ECHO. I think you're probably the smallest, to be honest, but it catalyzed a lot of other investments. If I just finish up with then critically looking back at this clarity, then I could ask myself, so has that clarity now been institutionalized in Somalia? And it's a very, very clear roadmap for the future, for the next site, whether that be Lukbo in Kismayo or another site in Baidoa? I would say no. It hasn't really. I think we have to go through the same process again, and whether we will manage to have that constellation of clarity, common purpose, that remains to be seen. The other question is, of course, is this is this actually a solution at the bigger level? I'm pretty sure that it's a good solution for the people that has moved to Barwaqo, at least all the ones I have spoken to. And we also see the testimonies in the videos. But if we imagine that we roughly have 3,000 households, and we imagine that the total number of IDP households in Somalia is maybe 400,000 households, I would question that, there's no way that we can build ourselves out of this. We cannot build settlements, communities for all these people. So I think we will also have to, in addition to creating new neighborhoods to urban centers, which we will have to do, and which is happening, but they become very quickly very poor neighborhoods and very slum neighborhoods. We will also have to look at other ways of upgrading existing areas where people are residing. That was my opening remarks. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you so much, Morten, and thank you for those brief and very insightful remarks. I believe then, as the participants have gotten a sense of where from the donor perspective on Barwaqo. There are some questions that are coming in, some that are very interesting and insightful, and I'd want to pose them to Mayor Watiin, if I may. One question is around livelihoods. So the participant is asking, in some areas, relocation has failed when locations have been selected that are far away from livelihood centers. I think that's what they meant. How did Barwaqo grapple with this, especially with discussions with the community and authorities?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And Barwaqo is locating, as I told you, in the southern side of Baidoa, which is a very integrated land with the farming and the livestock, and also the grazing area, and also the close to the city. So when we have selected 2018 Barwaqo side, we didn't only choose as open land, but we have chosen where can also integrate all the livelihoods, all the livestock, and all the economic development sectors. So Barwaqo is locating to the northern side. There is a farming land area, there is a livestock area, there is a grazing rangeland in the area. So where all IDPs can economically support in the future, where they want to cultivate their farming, where they want to harvest livestock, where they want to just look for grazing for their livestock, all is available. So it is like a rural urban where interacts the rural urban and of Baidoa. Now these people have been relocated to Barwaqo side, 2,009 households. They have been given all the access to the services. They have been given the plots, land plots. So the second option, we are thinking of how we can support them. Can we still call them that are still IDPs, or we can still call them the part of the poor urban host communities? So we are thinking of some sort of the IDPs exit strategy, and what other supports that Barwaqo relocated households need in terms of the livelihood, in terms of the economic development. So we have already assessed a land where can be cultivated their farming, where they can be also keep their livestock, where they can access other economic opportunities, like creating a business opportunities to Barwaqo side, investing the market to from the Chamber of Commerce. So we are thinking of the bigger picture, not just only relocated them, stay in them, give them title deeds, give them land plots, and after that nothing else. But we are thinking of how we can boost their economically. When we are thinking how they can have also access to the private banks, so for loans, for access loans, so how can also access to the other business banks, so to have to have access. Although they have a title deeds, they will be able to access. We are now, as a municipality, we are now working on engaging the private sector. We are engaging the banks. We are engaging the other institutions in Southern State diaspora. So to create a sustainable solution for those IDPs, those who have been relocated and those who have not yet been relocated. So this is what we are thinking of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Watiin. And I think there are two follow-up questions from that around sustainability. The first is on whether the municipal government in Baidoa has observed that some IDPs would return to previous IDP settlements in search of humanitarian assistance, with huge investment having already been made in a place like Barwaqo. Did you observe a similar challenge in Barwaqo? And then also, if you may, there is a question around healthcare and education and sustainable provision of these services. So the question here, who will pay for this? Who is to pay for this? You can answer those two.
Barwaqo side is, for example, is a very inclusive area. We think of how can they get access to the health, how can they get access to education, how can they get access to water. And this is we are not only saying that humanitarian development partners are supporting this, we are not going to leave for them, but as a government, how we can also support the initiatives of Barwaqo side and the initiatives of the other IDP sites in Baidoa. So for example, the Office of the Prime Minister have donated $300,000 to Barwaqo side to construct a big hospital to Barwaqo side, which that hospital will be improving. Also, the people from the whole area, the people from urban cities can have directly access to the hospital, and they can get their healthy from the hospital without coming to the city center of Baidoa. So this will also reduce the Islam and the congestion, and also will give space other hospitals just not to receive the highest number of the patients, It will give access. The new hospital will also give access. Will also be improving the rural urban linkages in terms of the healthy. So the water also there. There are also rural villages surrounding in the area. So some sort of integration is. So we are not only just leaving this for humanitarian and the developmental partners, but municipality and the government are also willing to support from their side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Watiin. The next question is for Morten. I believe he's still with us. You had mentioned a comment around clarity of purpose. And the question to you is, how do you see donor investments coordinated for future similar projects? What does it take?
I think it takes these clarities that I talked about, but I think also that it also takes to have the timing right. I mean, if you came right today and we tried to do it again in the face of a drought and a possible risk of famine, it would be much harder. And I think that we have to really think about how we can get private investment and a kind of privatization to work in our favor. Because as I said before, if we on donor funds are gonna create communities, build settlements for all the IDPs in Somalia, that's gonna take a millennium or 100 years. So that's not a realistic way. But having said that, I'm not exclude that at a good point in time. I mean, remember when we started this, we kind of were behind us. We had a serious 16-17 drought that we had dealt with very well, quite well, very good. Now we are at a situation where we have a drought in front of us that we are far from dealing with to the levels that we should. So I think there's also that element to the whole thing. But then finally, I mean, you know, as Laura already mentioned, this was not a single donor endeavor or engagement. So it's clear that nobody can, no one single donor is gonna intervene at this kind of scale of 10, 11 million. But I think we need to think more creative about other models where we can get the private sector and private investments to work in our favor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Morten, for that. And since you've mentioned private sector, there's a question here that I would pose to Mayor Watiin, and it's around the uptake of private sector investment in leasing of land. So I'll just read it completely. So it's Laura briefly mentioned that part of Barwaqo would be or has been left to incentivize economic development. For example, leasing of land to private sector investments. Has there been indicators of uptake by private sector in Southwest for such opportunities, and who are interested to invest in other infrastructure services within Barwaqo besides the market construction?
Thank you very much. You know, we are fully engaged the private sector, the overall private sector in Southeast Somalia, particularly those who are working in Baidoa. And there is a lot of opportunities, and Barwaqo has also attracted the eyes of the business groups in Southeast State as well as in Baidoa. And we are also receiving money requests that some businesses are still to invest to Barwaqo side. Initially, the Barwaqo business group has started construction of a new market in Barwaqo side. So, you know, all Baidoa is using the market which is in the city center, which is a very slum, very congested area. And we have, after the mobilization of the private sector, Barwaqo, this has attracted a quick investment, and new business opportunities and ideas were created by Barwaqo Business Group. And the investment of the market construction is ongoing. And so the future plan is that this market will be the biggest market in Somalia and the East Africa. We'll make Baidoa the business hub where all supplies from Somalia, Ethiopia, and Kenya will be exchanged. Our collective efforts in the future, we want to make Barwaqo city as a town that has developed urban settings. So this business, as you know that Baidoa connects many regions in Somalia as well as the Ethiopian and Kenyan borders. The city is a very strategic city, which has in terms of the business opportunities. So after we have engaged with the private sector, we have several meetings with the municipality and the private sector, and we have also we could see that a lot of opportunities happening in Barwaqo side. All the transport businesses from Mogadishu to Ethiopian and Kenyan borders will be passing to Baidoa, and all the other transport from Baidoa, from Ethiopia and Kenyan borders will be passing to Baidoa. So there is a big opportunity that Baidoa also sometimes can be a type of the dry port where the supplies can be exchanged from Ethiopia and Kenyan borders, as well as the supplies from the southern central Somalia. So considering these opportunities, we are mobilizing the business group with the Chamber of the Commerce of the Southern State Somalia to show that their commitment developing the biggest market in Baidoa. And Barwaqo is one of the target areas that these opportunities can be benefiting from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Watiin. And since in the interest of time, I'm informed we have less than 15 minutes. Maybe I can ask 2 last questions, Laura? Just two last questions. And apologies, I've not engaged Laura in this conversation. I think you've heard from her during this period. So I have nothing against Laura or women in general. I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you so much. So Watiin, on this question, what would it take then to replicate Baidoa in every region in Somalia? What is your perspective on that?
I have a lot of perspective on this replication in Somalia, but everything depends on the government commitment and the political willing, that how the other states of Somalia are willing also to replicate the Barwaqo site in their locations, like Kismayo, Jubaland, Puntland, and Galmudug, everywhere in Somalia. So the first important thing is whatever work you're doing, if you don't have government support, if you don't have government political willing from the government side, so it will be very hard to success all those plans. But the most important thing is whenever you're doing a step, is from the office of the president up to the community level, you should have there should be a willingness that people are willing to integrate with IDPs, to integrate with the host communities and IDPs, and also to replicate the Barwaqo side. We could see that some Jubaland teams visited to Baidoa just to learn from Baidoa and visit the Barwaqo site, although they are also willing to also replicate in Kismayo. As long as there is a commitment in place, as long as there is a donor support, as long as there is a government commitment, so this can be replicated in Somalia. And I would suggest that there should be many of learning events should be also initiated, because we can learn from each other, peer-to-peer learning engagement is, and also we can also what is Baidoa is achieved that which Kismayo does not achieve, and what Kismayo achieved Baidoa does not achieve. So such exchange of ideas is also very important. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe one last question to you, and then one last question to Morten, and then we can wrap up. The last question to you, Mayor Watiin, is would the creation of a resettlement site solely for IDPs potentially pass of IDPs communities from the urban communities? What do you think?
We are not only creating settlement to IDPs. As you could see, that Barwaqo site is also the total of the 2,009 households, out of 170 of them are from the poor host communities. And in the area also, there are many host communities who have been settled in the areas. So we are looking for how they can integrate. We don't want only IDPs to isolate in the particular areas. and call them where the IDPs have been relocated. And after relocation happening, the services provided, we don't want to say that the IDP sites. They can be also part of the poor host communities in Baidoa. We are thinking of some sort of the IDP exit strategy that we need to develop it. Durable solutions, urban resilience, and IDP exit strategy. For example, we have relocated 2,000 households, IDPs, formerly known IDPs, to the Barwaqo site. Almost another 1,000 households has bought land in Baidoa. So what do we call them? Will they still remain IDPs, or they can be also part of the poor urban host communities? So we want from 68,000, for example, households of IDPs are today living in Baidoa. We have deducted 2,009 households who have been located to Barwaqo site. So we need to deduct from there, from 68,000 households. So 66 IDPs will remain still in the IDP sites. So in Barwaqo site, those relocation households, we can look at alternatives that we can support them. So we cannot call them anymore. They are part of the still IDPs. So every step we are taking of. Also, we are thinking of how can they integrate IDPs with the host communities in Baidoa. So we don't want to isolate the IDPs alone in the isolation area or something in the corner of the town. So this is all the objectives of the Inchbarat.
Thank you so much, Mayor Watiin. Then the last question to you, Morten, is what do you think donors or agencies can do to build and resource a collective vision across the humanitarian development nexus to make more large investments like this a reality, and particularly given the pressures of limited resources and recurring droughts and crises?
Yeah, especially considering the limited resources in the face of major crises, difficult. But I think that the leadership we saw from Mayor Watiin was very, very indispensable. I mean, having a city manager of a new generation that looks at these things and understands these things in a different light definitely gave confidence for our investment. So if you could convey that to your fellow mayors and colleague mayors in Mogadishu, in Somalia, I think that would be very good. I also think that you had a personal keen interest in this whole process, and then I would say we have to work within our own structures also. I mean, the clusters on the humanitarian side or sector working groups on the development side has to be taken into oath and into account, because I think I saw a question in the chat box at some point in time. So what is going to happen when the humanitarian assistance kind of runs out, when Danwadaag finishes on Thursday or tomorrow? But my question would also be how much more humanitarian resources would be required to be put into Barwaqo. We have run the show for 3 years now, and if we have not managed to make that sustainable, maybe not 100%, but sustainable to a certain degree, we have certainly failed. But I do think that we have managed to make it sustainable to a large degree, and that's another important point for donors to understand or to see that sustainability aspect has been taken into the planning from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Morten, for that, and those are very, very good and clear points. And of course, this learning event and the engagement in Barwaqo would not have been possible were it not for the contribution of FCDO. And we have a short clip from Jake, which will be playing shortly, making a few remarks on the Barwaqo site as well as FCDO's contribution.
Good morning. So my name is Jake Peters. I'm the Humanitarian Adviser for FCDO Somalia. I've just been asked to say a few words this morning on the FCDO perspective of the Barwaqo initiative. So maybe just to start, I mean, until 2019, the durable solution programs in Somalia were very much focusing on supporting IDPs in existing settlement sites, provision of livelihoods, basic services. But it was quite clear, particularly in Baidoa, that we were facing some quite fundamental challenges in terms of land tenure security for IDPs, and the challenge being sort of working in these settlements, providing services, trying to sort of change conditions, but ultimately this sort of fundamental barrier in terms of the rights of the IDPs to actually remain in the land, and with that came, of course, significant risks around evictions. So with the offer of land from the Southwest State and Baidoa municipality in 2019, there was very much a clear opportunity to do something different and look at putting or shifting durable solutions programming in a slightly different direction, where we could actually approach the programming with a much more solid basis of land tenure security for IDPs. And I think it's very much important to note that this was clearly a government-led initiative. It was only possible because of the proactiveness of the government to actually provide this land, to allow this type of work to take place. I mean, I think, with this type of initiative, there's obviously going to be challenges, right? Particularly when we're talking about land in Somalia, in terms of disputes of who owns the land, who has rights to it, security. So noting that this land is a bit further outside of Baidoa. And of course, while I do think that the government and the partners have tackled these issues very well, I think it's just important to note for both partners and donors that when we do try to shift towards this type of working, in terms of new land sites for durable solutions programming, there ultimately are going to be risks, and I think we just need to ensure that our appetite to support these types of initiatives is appropriately aligned to those risks. I suppose another key challenge is around the cost of actually doing this, right? When we're looking at essentially setting up a new settlement, the costs are significant. Housing, infrastructure, services, and whereas the resources within Durable Solutions Program is clearly quite limited. I think this is something we recognized quite early on at the start, is that with the Danwadaag program itself, it wasn't going to be sufficient to develop Barwaqo, with the Danwadaag budget. So quite early on, we saw it as prudent to really set parameters of what are the types of initiatives within Barwaqo that we should be funding through Danwadaag. What are the kind of cost metrics that we need to put in place to make sure that it is affordable? And I think as part of this process, we did see really some good collective efforts from other donors, other types of programs on the kind of humanitarian side. So of course, ECHO, and also others on the development side. And I think that's definitely something we need to reflect on in terms of how we move forward. Barwaqo definitely represents a strong case of good practice in terms of how we can move forward on durable solutions. But ultimately, we also need to consider the scale of the problem, the challenge that we have, right? I mean, 2.9 million IDPs or less, if you're looking at providing these solutions to the most vulnerable cohorts of that 2.9 million. But even so, it's probably, you're still talking hundreds of thousands, into the millions in terms of the scale of the challenge. And of course, when we look at the cost of Barwaqo, of providing this solution to 12,000 people, it quickly becomes apparent that the scalability will be a challenge. So I think moving forward, these principles in terms of cost parameters, recognizing what the added value and role is of different programs, different funding types when it comes to these new site solutions is definitely going to be important. And I think that and even with durable solutions, it's going to be important to recognize along the spectrum, what type of funding, what type of donors should be working at what level or what stage of the project, and then ultimately, where do we need more substantial finance from development programs or the World Bank, as an example, to kind of come in and deliver more of the sort of broader infrastructure at scale. But I think these are definitely principles we've developed in the Barwaqo, so I think we're in a good place to hopefully move forward on this kind of collective way of thinking. I appreciate I've already taken up quite a bit of time, so maybe let me just end by thanking the Danwadaag Consortium and all the partners and operational and resource partners who've engaged and invested in Barwaqo and made this work so far. I really do think it provides a good foundation for what is achievable in terms of durable solutions in Somalia. I think it sets us in a good place moving forward with the sort of next generation of durable solutions programs moving forward. So and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that. And I think at this point I want to hand over to Laura for brief some concluding remarks as well as finalizing the learning event. Laura.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And thanks very much to Mayor Watiin and to Morten for, I think, excellent contributions. And again, we're really honoured, Mayor Watiin, that you're able to be here with us today, recognising the number of other priorities that you have in Baidoa. We feel very privileged to have you with us. Just maybe a couple of reflections from my side. I think this reflection around the timing and the opportunity that Barwaqo presented at that point in time really contributed to how much traction and how much momentum we're able to build. And I think that's a really important aspect that we need to capture and also document within this learning. We are not proposing that Barwaqo is the solution for 3 or maybe close to 4 million IDPs by the end of 2022 for Somalia. Absolutely not. That is not feasible, it's not realistic, and it's not practical. But what we do feel that it represents is a very practical, concrete example of how solutions can be built with these enabling conditions. And we do feel that Barwaqo does represent an important option within a menu of approaches for addressing the displacement crisis in Somalia. And it is one that we will be working with Mayor Watiin and with other government leaders around Somalia to work on developing a template that can be replicated, that can be scaled up. And I think one of the critical components that's come through very clearly in terms of the questions is really the private sector engagement. And again, looking at the value of investments to date for Barwaqo, this $11 million, and recognizing that in order to make this a more viable option, a more viable approach, we need to ensure that we engage private sector from the outset and develop a more sustainable funding model for a Barwaqo approach to be scaled up. So that will be one of the critical priorities for us moving forwards. As Morten mentioned, Danwadaag Phase 1 is drawing to a close tomorrow. And all the learning that we have distilled through our programming and through our engagements in Somalia over the past 3.5 years will be shared. On this website that you see in front of you, the Regional Durable Solutions website, hosts a page on Danwadaag, and all of the learning from these events that have taken place over the past 2 weeks, including the videos and the slides, will be available for you there. And please do feel free to reach out to us at danwadaag@iom.int. We would love to hear from you. We do hope that you have taken away from this learning event some inspirational points, that these solutions are viable, they are possible if we can work collectively to create these enabling conditions. We can really make sustainable change happen. So again, we would love to hear from you on our website, or please feel out to reach out to us on the email. And thank you so much for taking part of this event. We really very much value your participation and all the contributions throughout. Thank you very much, and goodbye.